Easter eggs and predictions for Season 7, Episode 5 of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Spoiler not caught up. So the episode's title is called A Trout in the Milk, which was referenced a couple times in the episode by Sousa, but it's also a reference to the show The Street of San Francisco, which was premiered in 1973, the same year that this episode took place. And I found out that Michael Douglas actually starred in it, who currently plays Hank Pym in the MCU. So, nice kind of tie-in, I guess, in a way, or like connection. But yeah, this episode actually had contained their very first intro scene, and it had old clips used in it for majority of the cast. But we had Clark from Season 1, Episode 3, The Asset, Ming-Na Wen from Season 2, Episode 4, The Face My Enemy, Chloe from Season 3, Episode 1, Law of Nature, Henry Simmons from Season 3, Episode 22, Ascension, and Natalia from Season 3, Episode 11, from Bouncing Back, her debut episode. So those are the only characters that actually had their own intro, clip from an episode. Jeff Ward and Elizabeth didn't get one. I don't exactly know the reason, but I believe they said someone on Elizabeth's live stream, one of them said something about rights issues or something like that, and that's why they had to film actual new scenes for them for the intro. So yeah, I don't know exactly how that worked, but yeah. And I could be completely wrong, but I also believe they mentioned it a couple times in the live stream, but they said they inspired the walk that Coulson and May did at the beginning of the episode after Saturday Night Fever, which came out in 1977. So yeah, and we have this little back and forth where Seuss is trying to get used to the whole time travel and going forward in time and not knowing what to wear, how it's gonna play out or whatever, and he apparently wasn't a fan of seeing bell bottoms, which Daisy corrected him on, but he calls them elephant pants, and apparently there are bell bottoms that are called elephant bells, and they're mainly used with denim, and they were popular in the mid to late 70s. So in around this time, because later on in this episode, they do go to 1976. So yeah, it's, I guess, if you want to say the 73 is mid to late, but yeah. And I'm so glad that they brought up whether or not Seuss actually could have died or originally had died in their timeline or not, because so far we have seen that nothing had really changed up to that point, as we assumed, because we find out later on in the episode a lot of things had changed after that point. But Seuss's death in general, it just, because he died, everything was fixed, but into the public, everyone thought he died, but he didn't actually die, because the team actually brought him out of the timeline and is now with us. So yeah, had this always happen, or is this just a way for them to get away with getting Sousa on this show? So yeah, if that makes any sense. So we go back to the Koenig Speakeasy, and I will talk about that later on in predictions. So yeah, but Coulson actually names drops Chief Dooley from the Agent Carter Season 1. So yeah, apparently he's been at the Speakeasy Club a couple of times. So yeah, and we have this thing that I brought up last video, which I was hoping that they would retcon or like reference in a way that it makes sense, and I'm so glad that the writers actually remembered it, because we were in the 1970s, and in 1970 they in season three flashback, we've seen Gideon Malik and Nathaniel Malik mourning basically the loss of Freddie Malik's death and all that kind of stuff, and it connects more later on in this episode. So yeah, but I'm so glad they found a way to actually explain what has happened. That the Chromicons changed time. We're assuming, because he's supposed to have died in 1970. So yeah. And we have Deke and Simmons dealing with some stuff on the Zephyr and whatnot, and he does wonder where Fitz is, but he calls him, have you heard from Bobo and whatnot, and that's his name for Grandpa. So yeah, and I will talk about that also in predictions for Fitz. So yeah, we have Mac and Yo-Yo basically on a date night, and they're bringing up how she's basically feeling and trying to figure out whether or not her powers are just gonna go back to normal or whatnot. And she jokingly asks Mac, why do you call me Yo-Yo? Because that's based on her powers going back and forth, but he turned it a different way. So yeah, and we actually finally get a new cool or first look in the MCU of the blue jumpsuit uniforms from the comics, which were introduced in Strange Tales Volume 1, number 135, which came out in 1965 in August. So yeah, it's been around for a while, and it just took them this long to actually debut them in the MCU. So that's cool. And apparently, Sousa actually had known Rick Stoner, which is a big part of this episode. We met him back in episode 11 of season 5. He was just a hologram at the time. So yeah. But apparently Sousa knows him a lot more than I was. So yeah. And the biggest issue that came across this episode was the whole Project Insight, which actually was a big part of the Winter Soldier, but the Chromicons used their acknowledge from that event to use it 40 years older, 40 years ahead of schedule, and wipe out all the all the threats that will come they know of. So yeah, and there's a big list. I'll get to that later on. So yeah, but we have Agent May going undercover as Agent Chastity McBride, which is actually a character in the comics. I'm not sure how many comics she's actually appeared in. I just know that she was introduced in Elektra Assassin number 5, which came out in 1986. So yeah, I don't know exactly how big of a role she does, how big of a role she has, but she was in there. So yeah, but we see the return of Gideon Malik, and they actually had to recast Nathaniel. Like, he's not the same actor that was in the Paradise Lost episode. And I'm assuming that's because the actor was busy on the Kissing Booth. So, but it makes sense that it's 3 years older. He might have changed in those 3 years, but then you have another jump of of another 3 years into 1976. So it makes sense that they would have recast him just like they recast Freddy when they got older. So yeah. So and you have May or Yo-Yo and Max still on like in the lighthouse, looking around, seeing what's going on, seeing if it's like empty. But they come across, uh, I said, the uniform the guys in the uniforms, and Yo-Yo actually mentions, have you not seen any James Bond's movie? Because having an evil lair with men in jumpsuits, it basically equals bad. So yeah. Uh, and you have Sousa and Daisy separate from the team for a little bit of a mission, because they're since in the speakeasy. She remembers that there is a like hidden compartment behind a wall or whatever, and Sousa actually asks her if she have you ever been here before, and she says a few days ago, 1931, which was in the episode 2. So yeah, and the insight targets that I actually saw and could find any information about was Conrad Murphy, who was appeared in Secret Warriors number 24, which came out in 2011. Who and they say that she's the father of Sandra Murphy. I don't know who that is, but I don't know if that's who. She's a popular character in the comics, but yeah. Then you have the name drop of Bruce Banner, who the Hulk is. You know who that is. Victoria Hand, which was introduced to the MCU in Season 1, Episode 7, The Hub, with the whole mission with Fitz and Ward. Then you have, like, Michelle Amador, which could be Akila Amador's mother, who was in Season 1, Episode 4, I Spies. It's possible that's who that is, but I don't know exactly if that is. But you have Michael Phillips, who is in Punisher War Journal number 52, which came out in 1993. Jim Morit from the Howling Commandos, who actually appeared in Agent Carter the Howling Commandos was in Agent Carter and Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., but first appeared in Captain America: The First Avengers. So yeah, and you have the name drop, or you see the name Robert Gonzalez from season 2, episode 14, The Love in the Time of Hydra. I believe that was the first time we actually met him. So yeah, and the last one that is actually a possible like reference to someone is David Robertson, who was apparently the senator's security in Captain America: The First Avenger. I'm not sure if that's actually who that they're referencing, but it's possible. So yeah, but the only other name that caught people's eye was Thomas Hall, which could be Franklin Hall's father, but I don't know how that would work, because he's not. He would have already been born, so I don't know why you would target Thomas. But same with Jim Morita, because if he's already born and he's already old, I don't understand how is he a big threat at the point. So yeah, but they also say name drop Nick Fury and Peggy Carter were also targets, so they would be threats as well. So Peggy Carter, even though would be getting up there in age too. So yeah. And then you have a unique way of using Coulson's clone's name, Patrick Chutik, and he's from Processing, which was a reference from season 5 and season 6. So yeah, and then you have Enoch have his final like big entrance. Was in the trailer. Basically a Terminator in a style, saying, "Come with me if you want to continue to exist." So yeah, and you have Daisy and like Sousa talking and saying that he just wanted to have some goodbyes and whatnot because he's probably misses Peggy. So yeah, but then you have him referencing her powers because he saw it earlier in the episode, where he calls it the super serum thing. So yeah, and I believe that was the only Easter eggs or references. So comment down below if I missed any. So for predictions, I haven't really talked about Fitz too much this season, and a lot of people are talking about where he is and whatnot, and I'm assuming he's in present day, or maybe to 2023, but most likely present day, and probably hiding out in Koenig's Speakeasy because it's been a big deal this season, so it would make sense. And the only other prediction is that I don't see any reason why Nathaniel has to live, because he, like Freddy, he was supposed to have died years ago. So I'm assuming he's going to die at least next episode. I don't see him any longer. So yeah, comment down below if I mentioned any Easter eggs or references. See ya.